Now, in this lesson, we will start a new topic of bearings. New topic of bearings. Now, when we're speaking of bearings, we're talking about a direction, a degree, right? An angle. Now, let us use an everyday example. Now, let's say your friend wants to come by you and they want to know where you live and they're asking you for direction. How do I find where you live in? The first thing you will ask them is where that person is. Where are you? Where are you located? So let's say, for instance, I want to know where the botanical gardens is, and I have and I am asking directions, and I am at the Stabroek Market. How do I get there? The person would then ask, where are you? So when they know that I'm at Stabroek Market, they can give me directions from there. Now a bearing works in the same place. When we're using a bearing, we start with one fixed position. And a bearing is the measure relative to that fixed position. The bearing is the measure relative to that fixed position. So the fixed position that we measure bearings from is called the north line. We measure it from the north. So when you are, let's say for instance, if you become a geologist and you go into the jungle to do your work, you're given a compass. That compass has the direction north. So from north, you will be able to know where is east, west, and south. And you're able to find your bearings from that particular direction, from that particular point of the north line. So it is, the bearings is a measure from a particular point, and it's measured using three digits. So the north line represents 0, 0, is represented by 0, 0, 0. And we measure from that north line in a clockwise direction. We measure from the north line in a clockwise direction. So two things we need to understand is that first, we always start from the north line. We always measure in a clockwise direction, and a bearing is represented by three numbers. So north is represented by 0, 0, 0 degrees. That's our fixed point. East is 0, 9, 0 is east. Or when we say, if someone is saying they're walking due east, it means that they're walking on a bearing of 90 degrees. If they're walking due south, they're walking on a bearing of 180 degrees. If they're walking due west, they're walking on a bearing of 270 degrees. So let us recap. A bearing is a measure of one point from a fixed point. It is measured using three numbers, and it is measured in a clockwise direction. It is measured in a clockwise direction. So let us do some practice. Let's say M is on a bearing of 35 degrees from L. Find the bearing of L from M. So first of all, let's do a sketch of the bearing of M from L. So first of all, every time we want to sketch it, we always start with our north line. So for part A, the first thing we draw is our north line. Alright? And that north line, we use an N to represent that north line. Now, notice that we want a bearing of 35 degrees. Reminding ourselves, this is a sketch. We don't have to do it accurately that we have to use our protractor and measure 35 degrees. We are doing a sketch of it. So we know that 35 degrees, know that if this is 0 and this is 90, and we measure in a clockwise direction, 35 degrees will be between these two, but it will be closer to 0. So here it is, 35 degrees. All right? 0, 3, 5 degrees. Now, it says M is on a bearing of 35 degrees from L. So which point is L? If it's from L, it means L is the starting point. This is L here, and we have M there. Right? So M is on a bearing of 35 degrees from L. Now, we also want to find out what is the bearing of L from M. And again, once we have to measure that, we must draw a north line for us. The first thing we do, we draw our north line at the point M. We draw the north line at the point M. So we draw another north line here, right, representing north. Note here that the north lines are parallel to each other, and that is very important thing to know. That is a very important character to know, that these two north lines, all the north lines will be parallel to each other. So what we want to find out is the bearing of L from the point M. So what we're doing, we're measuring this bearing from this point M around here. We want to know that angle there. All right, we want to know that angle. How do we find that angle? Now notice that we said that these two lines are parallel, and this will bring to mind some of the line theories you would have done in your earlier classes, right? In Form 2 and 3, right? I hope you remember those line theories. Now, what we will do, what we did, is extend this line. And if we notice that here we have a straight line, right? And the two parallel lines and an intersecting line. What does that remind us of? What some things we know? First of all, if this line is a straight line, it means here is south, and south is at 180 degrees. So any straight line is equal to 180 degrees. So down here is 180 degrees. Now, reminding ourselves of our parallel line, the theories from parallel line, where we have a transverse line cutting those two parallel lines, there are some important things to note. First of all, these two angles are alternate angles, or what is known, what we call Z angles. And if we're reminded about Z angles, that Z angles are equal to each other. So if this is 30 degrees, it means down here, this portion between this parallel line and this line will be 35 degrees too. Therefore, the angle, the bearing of L from the point M will be the 180 degrees that we have here plus the 35 degrees, which will give us 215 degrees. So the bearing of the line, bearing of L from M is 215 degrees. So once we have an acute angle, what we can do, we extend this line. We know that these two will be alternate, these two will be equal. So if here is 35, we will have 35 there, and then we add one over 180 to find the bearing around here. And that, as we found, is 215 degrees. Now, the next question, part B, says X is on a bearing of 125 degrees from Y. Find the bearing of Y from X. Again, let us first start by drawing our north line. Let's start by drawing our north line. So, we have our north line, and alright, if X is on a bearing of 125 from Y, it means Y is our starting point. Y is our starting point. And it's on a bearing of 125 degrees. So notice that 125 degrees would be between 90 and 180. So it is somewhere in this portion over here, in this quadrant, between 90 and 180 degrees. So here we will have 125 degrees, and that is Y, and X would be here. So we have our bearing of 125 degrees. Next, we have to calculate what is the bearing of X, of Y from the point X. We want to calculate the bearing of Y from the point X. So what we do at X, we will draw our north line. We will draw another north line. So here we have our north line. Alright, north lines are parallel, and we want the bearing of Y from the point X. So what we're trying to find out is our bearing around here. So let us extend this north line, and we will have our two parallel lines. And what we know from parallel lines, and it has the transversal cutting those parallel lines, if here is 125, it means this angle here will be 125 too. And the angle around here, since this is a straight line, over here will be 180. So we have 180 plus the 125. 180 degrees plus 125. So our answer will be the sum of 180 plus 125, which will give us 305 degrees. So the bearing of Y from the point X, the bearing of Y from X is 2, right? Am I writing square? Is 305 degrees. Bearing of Y from X is 305 degrees. So note that once, as in our previous example and this example, anytime our angle is less than 180, anytime the angle is less than 180, to find the other angle, we add to 180 and we get the bearing from one point to the next. Now, part C. P is on a bearing of 217 degrees from Q. Find the bearing of Q from P. So let us start by identifying or drawing the bearing of P from Q. P from Q, with Q being our starting point. Q being our starting point. So our north line first, remember to draw your north line. All right, and a bearing of 217 degrees. A bearing of 217 degrees will be around here. See, it is between 180 and 270. So it is somewhere in this quadrant. So here we have 217 degrees north, and our starting point here at this point will be, if it's from Q, this point here will be Q. From Q, we're measuring from Q, and here is P. All right, so now the question asks, what is the bearing of Q from P? So P now becomes our starting point, and we have to find that bearing to Q. So again, remember, always draw our north line first. Always draw your north line. So the north line is there. So what we want to find the bearing of Q from P is this portion here. That portion there. So how do we do that? Since remember we said with alternate angles are equal. So if we have 217 here, if 217 comes right around here, this angle here, this angle between here will be equal to this angle here. These two angles will be equal since they're alternate, or another term for it is Z angles, will be Z angles. So these two angles are equal. Remember, if this straight line is 180, the difference of 217 and 180 will give me this angle here. So 217 minus 180 will give me the angle between there. So that angle will be equal to 37 degrees. 37 degrees. So if here is 37 degrees, that means this angle here will also be 37 degrees. Alright? So therefore, the bearing of Q from P, the bearing of Q from P is equal to 37 degrees. All right, now let's look at our final one. A is on a bearing of 321 degrees from B. A is on a bearing of 321 degrees from B. Find the bearing of B from A. Again, draw our north line. Draw your north line. All right, draw your north line. North line. All right, now if it is from B, it means that B is our starting point. It means B is our starting point. So B is here, and A is on a bearing of 321. So it means that if it's 321, it is between 270 and north, right? So 270 and 360, which will also be equal to 0, 0, 0, since it's on the north line. So we need to find, so this 321 will be between there. So here we have our 321. And remember, we're measuring in a clockwise direction. So it's 321 around here. 321 degrees. So what we need here is to find what our A is. So here is A. we have north. So if we want to find the bearing of B from A, the bearing of B from A, with A being our starting point, what we're asking for is this angle there. Reminding ourselves that since we have two parallel lines, these two angles are equal. These two angles are equal. So to find what this angle is, all we need to do is subtract 180 from our 321. 180 from 321, and will give us this angle here. And these two angles are equal. These two angles are equal since they are parallel and the transversal cuts them. Right? The two angles are alternate or Z angles. So how do we find this angle? 321, if around here is 180, up to here is 180, so there will be the difference, minus 180, which will give us 141 degrees. All right, 141 degrees. So this angle here is 141, and since this is 141, here will be 141 too. So the bearing of B from A, the bearing of B from A is 141 degrees. In our next class, we will do some more questions where we'll have to find the distance when between 2 points or when a bearing is given.